Sunday over at the Grand Villa, and it was a shortened version. I said, well, I'm going to amplify it for the church. They gave us an opportunity to share with the veterans there, and I said I'd like to share this with the Northside Church, and this has been given abbreviated form of it there at the prayer breakfast. There, mayor and Babcock Furniture people and council members and preachers and all that other are at that Monday morning, Tuesday morning doings over there in Mulberry, and so that's up and coming. But the scripture tells us here in Psalm 33 verse 12, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And I want to share what the rest of the book says, because a lot of times we just park on that verse 12. The people he chose for his inheritance. From heaven, the Lord looks down and sees all mankind. From his dwelling place he watches all who live on earth, he who forms the hearts of all, who considers everything they do. No king is saved by the size of his army. No warrior escapes by his great strength. A horse is a vain hope for deliverance. Despite all its great strength, it cannot save, but the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, on those whose hope is in his unfailing love, to deliver them from death, to keep them alive in famine. We wait in hope for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. In him our hearts rejoice, for we trust in his holy name. May your unfailing love rest upon us, O Lord, even as we put our hope in you. I like that. People hope in the horse. I remember back in English class, it says for one of a nail, a horse was lost. And the horse threw a shoe. And for one of a horse, a soldier was lost. For one of a soldier, a battle was lost. For one of a battle, a nation was lost. So we talk about little things that are very, very important. Give me liberty. Well, we read in Psalm 33:12, blessed the nation whose God is the Lord. And I want to tell you about something over there in China. It's called the Great Wall. It was there supposedly to protect the Chinese silk secrets and to kind of ward out the people that were trouble, to keep them out of China. They built this Great Wall of China so high that no one could get over it. They built it so thick that no one could tunnel under it. They built its gigantic wall. It still exists today, and the people of China sat down behind the wall feeling that their future was secure. But in the first 100 years of its existence, China was invaded 3 times. The enemy didn't come over. They didn't tunnel through. Each time China was invaded, the enemy came through a gate left open for them. Those who guarded the gate had been bribed. While the people sat comfortably behind the security of the wall, they failed to teach their children integrity and patriotism. So they sold out to the enemy, and the enemy invaded their land. And that is a story by John Maxwell. It's interesting, when the founding fathers, Patrick Henry, came with this statement that was a statement of conviction when he says, give me liberty or give me death. And then in World War II, we have men that proclaimed the strong words, give me liberty. It seems like times have changed. These words now are gimme, gimme, gimme. Now, this happened recently. The flag is burned, all others taken down after the election. This was at the Hampshire College recently. And, you know, there's some idiot things going on. It says at the University of Michigan, their distressed students were provided with Play-Doh and coloring books as they sought comfort and distraction. The University of Michigan professors postponed an exam after many students complained about their serious stress over the election results. Cornell University held a campus-wide cry-in with officials handing out tissues and hot chocolate. One Cornell student says, I'm looking into flights back to Bangladesh right now so I can remove myself before Trump repatriates me. A college fix reported a dorm of the University of Pennsylvania hosted a post-election breathing space for students stressed out by the election, resulting that included cuddling with cats and a puppy, coloring and crafting, and snacks such as tea and chocolate. University of Kansas reminded its stressed out students that therapy dogs, a regular campus feature, were available. An economics professor at Yale University, Yale? The midterm exam is optional in response to many heartfelt notes from the students who are in shock over the election's returns. At Columbia University and a sister college, Barnard, students petitioned their professors to cancel classes and postpone exams because they were fearful for their lives and they couldn't take an exam while crying. Brainerd's president did not entirely cave, but he said, we are, however, leaving the decisions regarding individual classes and exams and assignments to the discretion of our faculty. Yale has reported that the Trump victory had students reeling. Students exhibited teary-eyed, bowed heads and cries of disbelief, and had the opportunity to participate in a post-election group primal scream to express their frustration productivity. Well, this is some of it, and this is others of it. Dan, this is really the picture after the Alabama-Florida game. No, this was some of the meltdown we had among our young people. Now, we should also be disturbed that college administration and professors who sanction the coddling of our youth. Here's my question does a person even belong in college if he or she cannot handle or tolerate differing opinions? Our answer is no. What lies in the heart of multiculturalism, diversity, and political correctness is an intolerance for different opinions. At Brown University, some students claim that the freedom of speech does not confer the right to express opinions they find distasteful. A while back, a Harvard University student organization representing women's interests advised law students that they should not feel pressured to attend a particular class. They were to participate in a particular class section because the focus on the law of sexual violence, if they feel that it might be traumatic. You know, it's like when in biology class we had dissect frogs and worms and crayfish, and some people puked. But I mean, that went with biology class, and if you want to do the biology class, you dissected a frog. And if you scream at you about it, so what? Even if somebody took a spatula and flipped some word guts across the lab room and hit somebody in the head with it. And that was Sandy Pegram, an idiot that was my lab partner. Come on, Pegram, grow up. You know, I'm acting a mature 14-year-old, and he's acting like an immature. But here, they want to be able to skip certain classes. How in the world are they going to be able to... Would you want that person for your lawyer to defend you in a rape case? Hey, anyway, the study finds that college students are remarkably incompetent, with reference to an American Institute of Research study that revealed that over 75% of two-year college students and 50% of four-year college students were incapable of completing everyday tasks. About 20% of four-year college students demonstrated only basic mathematical ability. In other words, when the power goes off, they can't even make change at a cash register. Yeah. And I was in stores like that. The power goes off, and they give me my Subway sandwich for free because the dumb kid didn't know how to make change with the cash register closed off. Well, a steeper 30% of two-year college students could not progress past elementary arithmetic. NBC News reported that Fortune 500 companies spend about $3 billion a year to train employees in basic English. Many of today's college students are not only academically incompetent, but emotionally so as well, and do not belong in college. These college snowflakes and the professors see themselves as our betters. You know, they've got a college education, see? They're your better.
Yeah, really.
You're a trucker. I'm from Yale. I pout over elections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, they consider that they, the college snowflakes and their professors, see themselves as our betters and morally superior to ordinary people. George Orwell was absolutely right when he said, "There are notions so foolish that only an intellectual will believe them." This was part of, and this was not the Alabama-Florida game, Dan. This is the primal scream. We call it cry baby.
Isn't that something? Just like a baby.
Rick, I picked this out because Rick's grandmother was a medicine woman for the Cherokee tribe.
Oh.
When did the chiefs of the tribe turn to the children and ask them, what are the traditions of the tribe? This is an attitude we have as leadership. The elders of the church are turning to the children saying, what kind of music do you like for you to come to church? What kind of doctrine do you like? What kind of subjects you want preached and taught on so you'll come to church? What are the traditions? And here you have, I don't know of any Indian tribe chieftain that's going to go to an 8-year-old kid and ask him, what are the traditions of the tribe? The chiefs, the elders, laid down to the next generation, or lay down the next generation, the traditions of the gospel of the Christ, the death, burial, and resurrection. When our leaders of our country met some years ago, Harvey Shapiro created an article that took a Paul Harvey radio broadcast and adapted it. Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. This was back in 1975, the rest of the story. You may not be able to quote one line from the Declaration of Independence at this moment. Henceforth, you'll always be able to quote at least one line. It's in the last paragraph, will you recall, when we're reminded when it says, we pledge mutually our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. We recognize those impressive words. You do not understand them until you know the rest of the story. In Pennsylvania State House, that's now called Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the best men from each of the colonies sat down together. It was a fortunate hour in our nation's history, one of the rare occasions in the lives of men when we had greatness to spare. These were men of means, well educated. 24 were lawyers and jurists. 9 were farmers and owners of large plantations. King George III had called these Americans traitors. The punishment for treason was hanging. The names now so familiar to you from the several signatures on the Declaration of Independence, the names were kept secret for 6 months. For each knew the full meaning of that magnificent last paragraph in which his signature pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. 56 men placed their names beneath that pledge. 56 men knew when they signed that they were risking everything. They knew if they won this fight, the best they could expect would be years of hardship and struggling as a nation. If they lost, they would face a hangman's rope. However, they signed the pledge, and they did indeed pay the price. In the document, this is the fate of those gallant 56. Carter Braxton of Virginia, wealthy planter and trader. He saw a ship swept from the seas. To pay his debts, he lost his home and all his properties, and he died in rags. Thomas Lynch Jr., who signed that pledge, was a third-generation rice grower, aristocrat, large plantation owner. After he signed, his health failed. With his wife, he set out for France and was never heard from again. Thomas McLean of Delaware was so harassed by the enemy that he was forced to move his family 5 times in 5 months. He served in Congress without pay. His family was in poverty and in hiding. Vandals looted the properties of Ellery and Clymer and Hall and Gwinnett and Walton and Hayward and Rutledge and Middleton. And Thomas Nelson Jr. of Virginia, he raised $2 million on his own signature to provide our allies the French fleet. After the war, he personally paid back the loans, wiped out his entire estate. He was never reimbursed by his government. In the final battle of Yorktown, he, Nelson, urged General Washington to fire on his, Nelson's, own home, which is occupied by General Cornwallis of the British. It was destroyed. He died bankrupt and was buried in an unmarked grave. Thomas Nelson Jr. had pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. The Hessians seized the home of Francis Hopkinson of New Jersey. Francis Lewis had his home and everything destroyed, his wife imprisoned. She died within a few months. Richard Stockton, who signed the Declaration, was captured and mistreated and his health broken to the extent that he died at the age of 51. His estate was pillaged. Thomas Hayward Jr. was captured when Charleston fell. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside while she was dying. The 13 children fled in all directions for their lives. His fields and gristmill were laid waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and caves and returned home after the war to find his wife dead, his children gone, his properties gone. He died a few weeks later of exhaustion and a broken heart. Lewis Morris saw his land destroyed, his family scattered. Philip Livingston died within a few months from the hardships of the war. John Hancock, history remembers that big, bold signature. That great sweeping signature attested to his vanity. It towers over the others. One of the wealthiest men in New England, he stood outside Boston one terrible night of the war and said, "Burn Boston, though it makes John Hancock a beggar, if the public good requires it." And he too lived up to the privilege. Of the 56, few were long to survive. 5 were captured by the British and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes from the Rhode Island to Charleston sacked, looted, and occupied by the enemy, or burned. 2 lost their sons in the army. 1 had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 died from the war, from its hardships, or from more of the merciful bullets. I don't know what impression you've ever had of the men who met that hot summer in Philadelphia, but I think that it is important that we remember this about them. These are not poor men or wild-eyed pirates. They are men of means, rich men, most of them. They enjoyed much ease and luxury in their personal living, not hungry men, prosperous men, wealthy landowners, substantially secure in their prosperity, but they considered liberty, and this is as much as I shall say of it. They had learned that liberty is so much more important than security, that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and they fulfilled their pledge. They paid the price, and freedom was born.
Amen.
And now, the rest of the story. The signers of the Declaration paid dearly for our freedom. But now we have the story of 2,000 years ago. Another battle for freedom was being fought. This was a stronger and far greater battle than the one fought by King George.
That's right.
It was a battle against the tyranny of sin. And the 13 men pledged their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor and paid the price, and their freedom was bought. These men were not poor men. They were men of means, rich men. 13 men placed their names beneath a more important pledge, a pledge in their hearts that said that they would follow Jesus, and they paid that price. You got James and John, the sons of Zebedee. He worked as a fisherman. Matthew 4, verse 18 to 22. It relates that Andrew and Peter were fishing, plying their trade when called. James and John were mending nets with their father when Jesus called them. The Bible states that these 2 men weren't just fishermen, but business owners with their father, for they employed others in this business. Thomas, Nathaniel, Philip, and 1 other. They worked as fishermen, for they were all together fishing when Jesus appeared to them in John chapter 28. And following Jesus after his resurrection. Matthew called Levi and Luke worked as a tax collector for the Roman government. Do you ever know any poor tax collectors? He would have acquired some education and reputation to achieve this job. His job provided him with considerable wealth because tax collectors earned a portion of what they collected. The more they collected, the more they could keep. There was no limit to their income. Their leader, Jesus Christ, risked the most. He owned the cattle on 1,000 hills and had many mansions, and the one who had the most to lose considered it worth losing if it would gain the world. And they too fulfilled their pledge. They paid the price. The freedom was born, And let me tell you the price they paid. Jesus said, "You know not what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I shall drink of, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we're able." He said to them, "You shall drink indeed of my cup, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with, but to sit on my right hand or my left is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it's prepared by my Father." I like this. Are you able? And we used to sing that song, "Lord, we are able." Well, here's the Apostle Paul. Lost his head. Here's one of the commentaries of those that serve Christ. Peter, he did not feel himself worthy to be crucified the same manner of the Christ, so he was crucified upside down. James, son of Zebedee, beheaded. John, son of Zebedee, no biblical record of his death. He's believed to have died of natural causes due to old age. He's the only one. Andrew, Peter's brother, crucified on a diagonal or X-shaped cross. Philip, crucified. Bartholomew, also known as Nathaniel, was flayed alive, skinned alive, and then beheaded. Matthew was killed with an axe. Thomas was killed with a spear. James, the son of Alphaeus, stoned at the age of 90 and then clubbed to death. Jude was clubbed to death and then beheaded. Simon the Zealot was sawn in half. Matthias, Judas' replacement, was stoned and beheaded. But they considered liberty so much more important than security that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And they fulfilled their pledge, they paid the price, and again, freedom was born. And there we have the rest of the story of 69 men who considered liberty so much more important than security that they pledged their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. And they fulfilled their pledge, and they paid the price, and they lost everything, and freedom was born. We, as those early founders, pledged their lives and their fortunes, their sacred honor, and as the apostles pledged their lives, we too need to cherish our freedoms. Norman Rockwell, in 1943, the famous artist of the, he was one that did the Saturday Evening Post, did some outstanding artwork, and these were the four freedoms: the freedom of worship, the freedom of speech, the freedom from fear, and the freedom from want. These were called his four freedoms. And I want to share with you from Johnny Cash. He says, "I walked through a country courthouse square. On a park bench, an old man was sitting there and said, 'Your old courthouse is kind of run down.' He said, 'Ma, it'll do for our little town.' I said, 'Your little old flagpole is leaning a little bit, and that ragged old flag you got hanging on it.' And he said, 'Have a seat.' And I sat down. 'Is this the first time you've been in our little town?' I said, 'I think it is.' He said, 'I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag. You see, we got a little hole in that flag there when Washington took it across the Delaware. It got powder burned the night Francis Scott Key sat watching it, writing, 'Say, can you see?' He got a rip in New Orleans with Packingham and Jackson, tugging at its seams. It almost fell at the Alamo, beside the Texas flag, but she waved on though. She got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville, and she got cut again at Shiloh Hill. There was Robert E. Lee and Beauregard and Bragg, and the south wind blew hard on that ragged old flag. On Flanders Field of World War I, she got a big hole from a Bertha gun. She turned blood red in World War II. She hung limp and low a time or two. She was in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Iran. She went there where she was sent by her old Uncle Sam. She waved from our ships upon the briny foam, and now they've about quit waving her back home. In her own good land here, she's been abused, she's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And the government for which she stands has been scandalized throughout the land, and she's getting threadbare, and she's wearing thin, but she's in good shape for the shape she's in. because she's been through the fire before, and I believe she can take a whole lot more. So we raised her up every morning, and we bring her down slow every night. We don't let her touch the ground, and we fold her upright. On second thought, I do like to brag, because I'm mighty proud of that grand old flag. And a final tribute this morning is one from the old Duke, John Wayne. And after we're done with this, I want to have our own Pledge of Allegiance. John Wayne said, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag. What do those words mean to you? To me they say, thank you, America, for your strength, your courage, and your freedom, which has been a beacon to the world for 200 years. Of the United States of America, whose bright stars are 50 states, each bearing its own stamp of individuality. People, 300 million strong, people have come to her from all corners of the earth. And to the republic for which it stands, a land of laws, with an ingenious system of checks and balances that allows no man to become a tyrant, and lets no group prevail, if their power is not tempered with a real concern for the governed, a land where the right of dissent and of free speech is jealously guarded, where the ballot box is the sword and the people its wielder, one nation under God, a land where freedom of worship is a cornerstone of her being, a land graced with temples and churches, synagogues, and altars that rise in profusion to embrace all the religions of the world. Indivisible, a land forged by the hot steel of raw courage and formed forever by the awful crucible of civil war. With liberty, where man in pursuit of an honest life will not be denied his chance, where her citizens move freely within her vast borders without hindrance of her. A land brimming with opportunity, where freedom of choice is the guide for all, and justice. The courts of our land are open to all. Its wheels of justice grind for all causes and all people. They look to every avenue for justice, every concern of the law, and they temper their reasoning with mercy for all. Let's have the congregation stand as we pledge allegiance to the flag. Offered to die for you, Jesus Christ, an American soldier. One died for your soul, one died for your freedom. And it is kind of interesting that, in the tribute to the military, it says it's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us the freedom of demonstration. It's the soldier, not the lawyer, who's given us the right to a fair trial. It's the soldier who salutes the flag, serves under the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag.
That's right.
Thank you, soldier. Jesus Christ, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Brother Glenn.